Hey Dan, how are you?
Hey, Michelle. Good. Good to see you again. We're doing another remote recording. And look at that, girl. Look at that new outfit you wear in there.
Oh, well, I guess it's new today.
Mhm. I love it. I love our listeners in the background are like, what are you really doing?
Well, we're trying to just get used to, recording remotely and making sure that, we can't see all the things that are around us that only like parts of it. So I have a little caricature behind me that I am kind of hiding because on the part where you could actually see my face, you really can't see the rest of the body other than my upper like chest area. So maybe that's what you're talking about.
I know. Actually, when I saw it earlier, I was like, oh, it's like a bird, but oh, that's
Well, it could be, but it's not. Anyway,
yeah.
so
So for those,
anyway, but I'm
I was gonna say, those of you listening on Buzzsprout, you'll have to like check us out on YouTube since we're now releasing both. There's
right. So in 2025, one of the things that we had talked about is doing more video recordings. And I mean, I dare say I think we're going to do hopefully all audio and video at the same time.
yep.
And you'll have to let us know if it's something that you like. But one of the big complaints that we had heard in the past is the fact that on podcast platforms, you really can't do like a closed captioning. So, and sometimes we talk too fast and sometimes maybe we talk too slow. And in podcast world, a lot of times people listen a little faster than they do in real life because you can speed up the audio. But then they really want to listen to something again. And it's nice because on YouTube you can have that closed captioning in there. So
Yep.
I think it'll be good. We just have to get used to the fact that neither one of us is like camera ready on a regular basis.
Right.
But you'll have to let us know if it's worth doing it. And then you'll also just have to put up with originally we called it the lost episodes on the podcast. And on this one, we're gonna like hopefully call them the like the ones that should have been lost, but probably weren't because their internet is forever.
Right. They'll be captured on YouTube. But the early,
Mm.
we'll look back. We'll probably like in the future, we'll be like, oh, look at that. They were so cute when they started on YouTube.
Well, and after our next recording, we will have gone to our first like a podcast expo.
I
And
know.
so we're gonna learn a little bit about what to do with that.
I'm excited about that. And there's
Yeah.
tracks. There's like tracks for beginner. I feel like I'm still a beginner.
We are still
There.
beginners.
I'll be there's people there and I'm gonna be like, I don't know anything that you guys are talking about. But
I
it'll be fun.
mean we are beginners because this is not our full-time gig.
Correct. Yes. Right.
I
This is more of
mean,
like a side hobby. That and
it is a side hobby.
now we're gonna go to a conference about it, but we got free admission, so that's why we're there.
Yeah, we're excited. So, today we're gonna revisit something on reviewing because we want to go back and talk about it as actually like break it down and how to use it. So, at the beginning of every year, we all have these goals. And one of the goals is to, in the sleep world, is to kind of have that reset or whatever you needed to do that you didn't get done. So, the app that we're reviewing is the CBT-I Coach App. Now, Dan and I were talking because he said it was kind of rebooted, and I like looked at it because I hadn't opened it for a little bit, and it was rebooted. So you've been using this a little bit more, Dan?
Yeah, so this is it's CBT-I Coach. It's an app. It's on the I believe it's on Android and on iPhone. So if you go to Google Play Store or if you go to the Apple App Store, you can download it, CBT-I Coach. The original one is still on there too now. I think you said it's called like the CBT-I Experience or something or along those lines. But yeah, so this app was developed by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. It's part of the CBT-I. It's not necessarily part of the treatment protocol that they use within the VA, um, but it's a great adjunct to a lot of things. So I actually use it for a lot of my clients that are wanting like an app-based way to do their sleep diary. Um, which you can do a couple different ways. But what I like about this one is that it asks you all the questions that I want to know, and then you can send the data directly to whoever you're working with. So, and it exports it as an Excel spreadsheet, which is also what I want since we're going to crunch some data when we're working together, looking at your sleep. Um,
Yeah, so to take a step back is that CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia,
mhm,
is probably the gold standard for treating chronic insomnia for decades now.
mhm,
And that about 10 plus years ago, they did a couple studies where they showed that it was almost as effective, if not more effective in certain populations,
mhm,
to actually have an artificial intelligent or an online option
mhm.
to do it. And so big organizations like the VA and university types of settings, they wanted to create a very accessible and free way to manage the at least the beginning parts of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And so what's really kind of cool about the app and why it's touted in the even those non-settings, those non-academic settings and the non-VA settings is because this is one of the only apps that you don't have these in-app purchases and you don't need Wi-Fi, to use it. And that's really important because one of the big premises of behavioral therapy treating insomnia is that we're not going to use technology and we're not going to be on the internet, all night long. So
Right.
it's really helpful. The other thing is I think the app itself is really nice and simple. And like Dan was saying, is you can get the data out there to whoever's helping you with your sleep or your accountability partner, your coach. Um, I really like seeing the data that comes from these types of apps because it gives me the data that I need and it gives the person like also the ability to kind of explore and to document what's going on.
Mhm.
So when you keep a sleep log, and this is why a lot of people don't like to keep sleep diaries or food diaries or exercise diaries, is it's
Right.
like that extra step of what you're doing, but sometimes you need to take that extra step to be able to like have a modifiable change.
Mhm.
So Dan, walk us through like the sleep diary part of CBTI Coach.
Yeah, and again, this is key.
Mm.
We're getting ready to kind of launch into 2025. We're going to do each of the CBTI sessions. So for those of you who we've talked to, and you're like, "Gosh, I want to do CBTI, but maybe I'm not ready," or if you've spoken with me and I've encouraged you to kind of get the Insomnia workbook, which I still think is a great kind of resource and kind of do that on your own. If you're one,
Until we find our own, right?
I know, girl, well, there's so many things we got to do. But so this will be another opportunity. You can literally listen along and kind of, and again, it's not going to be individualized to you. So that's the difference with, actual treatment, but this is educational. You can, follow along and say, okay, what is this and how does it apply to me? And a core part of all of this is understanding your sleep diary first and your kind of base where your sleep is before you do any changes. So go ahead and go to your app store and download it on your device, your iPad, your iPhone, your Android device, wherever. And when you open up, and it's a pretty simple interface. It's just like light blues and it looks kind of sleepy-ish, with these like curvy features. But you're gonna look for sleep diary is the first one there. So once you've downloaded that CBTI coach and you open up sleep diary, and I think it'll also ask permission, at least if you're on an iPhone, if you want to use your Apple Health Kit data. I mean, you can. It's totally up to you, whatever. You won't need it. Uh, you won't need it, but it's okay. You can. I have some people that love it and they want to merge everything to Apple Health. That's fine. Totally. If that floats your boat, do it. Go for it. But then you get to the add entry page. And the add entry page, this is where you want to do. You're going to do this every morning when you wake up, and it should literally take you less than 5 minutes. And so it's going to ask you a series of questions, and we're going to kind of go through these. And sometimes I have clients that say, "Gosh, why are these questions relevant?" But this is why I want to go through why each one of these questions are relevant. And the reason why is because we want to look at this data over time. And what we know about with sleep, and Michelle, I've talked about this, is that when you're making changes to your sleep, it's the cumulative long-term effect of these changes that usually take about a solid 3 to 4 weeks of you making the right changes consistently before you're gonna feel a difference. But if you can do that, and this is why we talked about doing like a forced boot camp. If you can do that, you can get better sleep. You legitimately can get better sleep, but you will have to experience a little bit of uncomfortability first. And so that's why this sleep diary is so crucial to that, of where I want to know where your sleep is at before we make any changes, so that as we're making changes, we know exactly what's working and what's not working. So, question one here: did you nap or doze yesterday? Michelle, why do you think that's important? Like, did you nap or doze? Who cares if you took a nap or dozed yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is depending on how old you are, and most adults are not going to need or require a nap during the day, and if they do, that may be a sign of either something that's happening at night, or it might contribute to why somebody might have that problem, the next night. So adults, let's just say someone over the age of 10 and maybe under the age of about 60, 65, it is normal not to nap. Um, and at the extremes of ages, young children and older adults, it's actually a really normal thing to nap. But if you are dealing with sleep difficulties at night, I call it a little bit like a sleep bank, even though it's not. Is if you use up some of your sleep opportunity that would be reserved for at night, and you use it during the day, it'll be a time that you're not going to be expected to sleep at night.
Exactly. And we'll talk about this concept when we dive into CBTI sessions, but your sleep pressure is not building as well if you took a nap during the day. So that's why we always want to know, did you nap or doze? And I have plenty of clients who actually say, never. I don't take naps. That's not my issue. And I have horrible sleep and I don't take any naps during the day. And I would say, great, that's fine. There's plenty of people just like you. I have other people who really struggle with daytime napping. So I would say there's variability there. But we want to know. Question number two: what time did you get into bed yesterday or last night? Why is this important, Michelle? What do you think?
So getting into bed is not the same as going to sleep, and so you'll see that in the next couple questions. But one of the important things is people are instructed to, be consistent with their bedtime and their wake up time. But it's really important to identify: are you actually sleepy when you're going into bed, or are you just getting into bed because it's a habit? Um, and it's also really important to not use your bed for doing other types of things. So someone who says, "Well, I get into bed because I watch 2 hours of, the news before I go to sleep," that could be a big red flag in terms of why somebody might not be sleeping well that night.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many clients I have where they're like, my bedtime routine is watching 2 hours of CSI or Law and Order, which God, it's been on for like 30 years at this point. Um, and and they're like, that's just my thing. That's what I do. I get into bed and and I can fall asleep to it. And I'm like, okay, okay. Like, I love, like, we'll take you where you're starting at because that's completely important.
But it's important to recognize it. Whether or not it's with sleep or with, I don't know, let's just say about food, is sometimes you don't recognize some of the habits that you get into. And it's why logging is so important, because, something that you think that you hardly ever do, when you fill out a log like this and over a couple weeks, you actually may notice that you break the rules quite a bit.
Oh, yes, exactly. Ding, 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 ding.
Do you break the rules? I break the rules sometimes.
Well, we all do. So here's the thing about human beings, and this is why it's so fascinating. Your recall of your own behavior is really not that great. Meaning, when you're asked to kind of, quiz yourself of like, what did I do over the last week? We don't really remember. And in fact, we break the rules quite regularly because we're like, meh, who cares? Why does it matter? And this is why, and the same is true actually when you look at the research on habit change with regards to behavioral interventions for weight loss. The actual act of tracking food intake is an effective mechanism of change all on its own, like completely independent of anything else we can do, like an intervention. The actual act of asking you to sit down and think about, what did I eat yesterday? Or what did my sleep look like last night? What time did I get into bed? These things are parts of what contributes to you making that change to getting better sleep, if that makes sense. So, all right. Number three, what time did you try to go to sleep? This one is so important. And by the way, there's these little like circle with an I in it beside each question. If you're not sure how to answer the question, just tap that. It'll give you a little bit more information. But what time did you go to sleep is when did you actually say, okay, my Law and Order's done or my CSI wrapped up or whatever it was that you were
Or
doing.
I missed the last 10 minutes and I have to go back and I have to rewatch it.
Exactly. Like maybe you're binge watching a show and you like pass out or something. What time did you actually try to go to bed? And then question 4 is also really important. It's your best guess. Like, how long do you think it took you to fall asleep? And this one's interesting because I get a lot of clients that tell me, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to guess at this. And I would say that's okay. Like, take your best guess. The research is really kind of fascinating on this, that your sleep diary actually gets better the longer you do it. So your recall gets much more accurate after you've done this for a solid 2 to 3 weeks. So I would say take your best guess. It's okay in the beginning. If you're like, yeah, it took me 15 minutes, took me 30 minutes, took me like 1 minute. I don't know. That's okay. Um, Number 5, how many times did you wake up, not counting your final awakening? Michelle, what is it asking? It's kind of a confusing question sometimes.
Yeah, so after your final awakening, meaning that's when you physically like get up and get, out of bed and go somewhere else. Like not it's you're not considering that your nighttime, but how many times you get up and are aware that you're up. So
Mhm.
when you're doing a sleep test, for example, we're going to record a whole bunch of things called arousals, which are 3-second like brain awakenings. You're not going to notice any of those because people are constantly shocked by me telling you, oh, you had, under 150 of these arousal things that are happening. Like, that's a lot. I would never wake up 150 times. But when people are awake for usually it's over 30 seconds and it could be minutes, it could be hours, but that perception of how many times you wake up versus how long each wake up was is kind of an important distinction because based on an endotype of your sleep disorder.
Totally. Absolutely. And also to be very clear, your sleep diary is going to help us to essentially disentangle if there are other sleep disorders there beyond insomnia as well. So this is another helpful piece of when we have information like this, we can say, wow, what else is really happening here? Because there could be something that's not insomnia as well. So um
Yeah. One of the things I'll just kind of say, because this is where a lot of people like are going through the motions of filling out the sleep log, and they're like, I have no idea. And rather than them just like sticking a specific number in there, I'll tell you something that you can try in the day, and you may have done this for other reasons, whether it's a meditation or a body scan or counting or a song is if you make a habit as you're falling asleep or if you woken up in the middle of the night of, going through a body scan, since you've done it in the day, if you can get through the body scan 3 times and you notice that each time you do a body scan, it takes you 5 minutes, which is a pretty short body scan, by the way. Um, then okay, then my awakening was probably about 15 minutes,
right.
5 times 3. If you have, like, kinda just that frustration, you're like, "Well, I'm just gonna put, like, 0 or 30," or, it would be really helpful as if you could try and quantify it a little bit. "Oh, well, I didn't even make it through halfway through my body scan." Well, then more easily you can answer this question. You could say, "Well, maybe it was, like, 2 minutes or 3
Right.
minutes."
Like a common one that I run into with clients on this one is that they say, "Oh, well, I woke up once and like I was awake for 4 hours in the night." And I was like, okay. I was like, let's dig a little deeper into that. Because another thing that happens is a lot of people really fail to recognize when they get these kind of micro sleep moments when they're having these middle of the night like arousals, right? So this is where I would say a lot of like chronic insomnia people that have been living with this stuff for like 10 plus years, they're like, I don't even sleep. Like I was awake for like 4 hours in the middle of the night. And I was like, really? And then we can actually kind of like go back and say, well, actually, there was a time I was awake for maybe an hour, and then I fell asleep again for another 20 minutes, and then I was awake for another hour or so. So I love the example that's here. It says if you woke up 3 times for 20 minutes, and then that's what you would write in there. You would say 60 minutes. But let's say you woke up once for 20 minutes, once for 35 minutes, and once for 15 minutes. That would be 20 plus 35 plus 15 is equal to 70 minutes, or roughly an hour and 10 minutes. So you can put it in either way. Um, but I would just say I would encourage you to really kind of think about how much time you actually are awake in the middle of the night. Because most people with sleep difficulties that say that they've been awake for like 4 or 5 hours in the middle of the night usually are getting sleep somewhere. You're just not quite sure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, when people are getting less than 4 or 5 hours of sleep, multiple nights in a row, they are not able to function during the day. It's just a physiologic rule. So, if you're saying, "You know what? I feel like I'm not sleeping really well, but I made it through an 8-hour, day at work. I watched my kids' soccer game for an hour, in the evening. I, made some dinner." Then you know that you're getting at least 5 or 6 hours of sleep because otherwise you would be, putting your head down during these type of events.
Yep, absolutely. Right. All right. So next questions, probably my favorite questions on this whole thing. So question number 6, what time was your final awakening? What does that mean, Michelle? Your final
Well,
awake?
first off, you say this is your favorite question. This is my least favorite question because
All right.
this is the question that delineates for me whether or not it's a psychology problem or a medical problem.
Oh,
So,
tell me more.
early morning awakenings, are really the hallmark of generally more of a psychologic issue as opposed to a physiologic medical issue.
Mhm.
So, what it means to me is if someone is waking up and is unable and unwilling or, um, really incapable of going back to sleep, that tends to be less of a insomnia issue, and it tends to be more of a psychologic issue. There's stuff that happens physiologically in your body at night, hormonally related, body temperature related, that really makes us want to wake up a little closer when the sun's coming up.
Mhm.
And so when that's not happening, or when it's happening much, much earlier than it should,
Mhm.
it tends to be a sign of other problems.
Oh yeah, I would say the subset of my clients that have the early morning awakenings, which I would say as a percentage is rather infrequent. But when it does show up, the profile that I'm usually kind of seeing are my really self-driven, entrepreneurial, like those types of individuals who just when their brain turns on, they're just like, bam, I'm here, I'm ready. And so sometimes their brain turns on, and for them, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and checking the business news or doing something like that's what they do. Um,
But it is a hallmark of an underlying psychologic issue,
oh yeah,
because your
anxiety.
body doesn't want to do this.
Correct. Yes, yes. No. That is cognitive hyperarousal, but on the morning end of things, which we'll talk about more when we dive into CBTI. So, but yeah, but very fascinating stuff. So we want to know what time you woke up. Number 7, did you wake up earlier than you desired? So this is just a simple kind of yes or no. And then number 8, ding, 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 my next most favorite question on here. What time did you get out of bed? Why does this matter, Michelle? Why do we care about what time you got out of bed? Like,
I mean, if
out of
if
bed.
anybody has listened to more than one of these episodes, if I had 2 choices, if I had one choice, I'd say that is the hallmark of improving your sleep quality is being very consistent 7 days a week. Vacation, not vacation, is getting out of bed. Because being in bed awake is just a bad habit. It's like the proverbial snacking.
Mhm.
Um, the main other one that you'll remember is not clock watching. So,
Oh, yeah.
um, you
Yep.
get to this with this whole sleep schedule, like, "Well, I'm not supposed to look at the clock, and I woke up earlier than I wanted to, but I didn't look at the clock." So, if you can say your ABCs, you can do a body scan, you can, tell yourself a short story, and you can still be in bed, you need to get out of bed.
Totally. Absolutely. Like, this is the, and we do this when we do kind of the psycho ed on for CBTI, is sleeping in the morning. If you have sleep difficulties, sleeping in the morning is not gonna help you. Even though it's one of those things where it feels so good in the morning to lay in bed and to like and I mean, girl, I'm a fan. I love it too. Like, I mean, it's not like, when when my sleep is bad, I know I can't do that. But when my sleep is good, I'm like, oh, this feels amazing. Um, Although usually my 9-year-old is already awake and yeah. So, um, but this is one of those things when you have sleep difficulties, your wake up time and get out of bed time have to be as close together as possible. And that's a key thing that we'll dive into. But I would say one of the most important questions on your sleep diary is what time did you actually get out of bed, start your day? I know you and I have talked about this before. One of your methods is you just throw off all the sheets, you make it
It's been so hard since it's been a little cold, but no, it is, yeah, you should throw off your sheets. You don't push, the snooze. If you have pushed the snooze, at least you're not cuddling, with the nice warm bed
totally.
or
Yeah.
the puppy or the other person. So
Yep.
it's an anchor.
Oh, totally. And it's one of those things here, and we'll talk about this, as we kind of dive into the episodes coming up too. I use hue lights and I have a simulated sunrise that happens in my bedroom every morning. And I love it. In fact, it's more effective for me to wake up to that than an actual alarm clock. Um, Now, are there days where I dislike it? Like, absolutely. But I don't keep my phone in my bedroom. Actually, I charge it outside. I mean, in my house, but not in my bedroom. Um, I plug it in outside on the porch. Um,
You keep it in your car.
right, right. Um, but I can tell you, light, it's incredibly powerful as an alerting kind of signal. So, and we'll dive into that. Um, Last question here, and this is fun on the app. You just get to rate your sleep, with the little smiley faces. Was it an up?
Visual analog system.
You got it. Was it a sad face? Was it a medium face? Was it a happy face? And then any other comments too? What I usually encourage people to write down is if you're not feeling well, or if you took other like, cold medicine or anything like that.
Also,
Uh,
if you're traveling, if it's like a vacation day versus like a regular work day,
Totally.
you can start to see patterns.
Mhm. Absolutely. Like it's all worth data. And then you just tap save and then you're done. So literally, it should take you less than 5 minutes to do this every
Yeah.
morning. So,
So that's the diary, that's the log. You can use whichever one you like. I tend to, give people choices, but the important one is the one that you're going to do. So it doesn't matter which one. You just want to use one that you do. A lot of times, though, I will have people either do it on paper and transpose it onto the electronic or vice versa.
mhm,
But it really doesn't matter. Remember, your provider that's helping you, or you that's helping you, or your coach that's helping you, or family member, it's important that you have the data and that you're not just relying on your memory. It's not important how you collate it.
right.
Um, but it could be a really helpful tip is if you know that you really love like a nice journal or something like that, it could be a really helpful tip because you look forward to doing it and you're more likely to do it if you do it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you've got to do what works for you. So I would say my goal is to get the data. How we get it, I mean, totally fine. There's lots of variability on that, but we just need.
So for the next 2 weeks, try and use either the app or your own sleep log, and
Mhm.
then you'll be ready for the next stages of the app that we're going to go over on our next episode.
Absolutely. I love that. Look at you. You're selling the next episode right there. Not that
You
people.
have to. You have to have something to know to look forward to.
Right. But I will say, like and I tell all of my clients this. In fact, the first session you see me, you start this for sleep. This is one of the most important things you can do to help get better rest. And
We are right here telling you that if you really listen to the Sleep Takeout podcast, you will not need a sleep provider.
mhm. Yes, absolutely. You can just listen
Have
or
us
work.
in your back pocket, but this podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only,
Yeah.
and it's really not meant to be individualized care. The people that need to see professionals are when you're going through this and you're really feeling frustrated or lost, or you have another problem that's happening and it's a little bit more complicated, maybe a specific medical issue or somebody else in your household that you're responsible for that is making it difficult for you to do the traditional answers to some of these questions.
Oh, yeah.
So we're here. The professionals are out there. It's just we're hoping that you can get what you need right
Absolutely.
here, right now.
You can think of us as like the audio and the visual workbook. Like, that's what we're doing. Like, we're having a fun time. So, but you're right. This is not specific treatment to you. This is just kind of educational, informational purposes. So, all right. Until next time, Sleep Nation, we'll see you in 2 weeks. I'm excited.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.